All right, so this is Max Fortune talking with Kelly Tucker about her book. The title?
I don't know.
I think we should be able to. Can we put this?
Oh, okay.
Yep. That and.
So we were real close. After my mom died from cancer in September of 2008. So, no, I'm sorry. After he came out of his, I guess, that, you know, in his I took it hard, but he just took it way. Some relationships are totally different. So, his relationship with my mom was way different than mine. It really, like, she passed in September. I didn't see him anymore until after we buried my mother. I didn't see him anymore till Thanksgiving. I hadn't heard from him, you know, and I heard he was kind of going through it because I was calling his fiance. You know, he was doing okay, and she would tell me, you know, but he wouldn't reach out to me, so I had to just, like, give him his space. So when family had a ritual, like, before we eat, we pray. So my grandfather blessed the food, and, you know, the other thing is everybody has to say what they're thankful for. So everybody says what they're thankful for, and so it got to him, and he just stood there in tears. We just everybody was just crying. And it seemed like after that, our relationship went to a whole nother level. Like, it just, I don't know, it just when you thought you couldn't, like, get closer to somebody or love somebody even more, then that happened. So,
Tell me.
Growing up, I was always protecting him. Like, growing up, we were both really little. Like, he was really little. So everybody always picked on him. So I was like, I always protected him. And I think I was little, but because I was so little and I was such a tomboy, I think I felt like I had to act like I was big and bad because we were so small. But he was very non-athletic. He did not have not one athletic bone in his body. But he did run track. I'll give him that. He did run track, but he couldn't do anything else. Loved to write poetry. My dad wrote poetry really well. Spanky wrote, and he loved photography. Dad loved photography. My grandfather, my dad's dad, did photography.
You know.
And let me tell you, one time he got punished. He got punished. My parents took everything out his room. And he had the smaller room, so the size bed, his dresser, his nightstand, and the mirror. So we were all downstairs, and I came upstairs because when he got punished, I really got punished too because I just didn't, like, he was the only person I had to play with in the house. So he couldn't come out his room, so he would sit in his doorway, and I would sit in my doorway, and we would, like, that's how we would interact. So I was downstairs doing something, and I heard him talking. I went upstairs. Now, one of the reasons he got punished was because he didn't do his chores that Friday. One of our chores was to dust the woodwork, as they called it back then. So he didn't do his. So that particular day when he got punished, he collected all the dust and was sitting there like he had a little village set up of dust things, and that's what he was playing with. Like, he would play with anything. So he just amused himself with the dust bunnies, if you want to call them. I mean, he just did some crazy stuff. He dropped out in the 11th grade. Don't know why. He fit and put him out and told him that nobody was going to be in the house and, you know, not go to school and not do what they supposed to do when he was getting up and going to work every day. So he put him out. Like, that was the biggest argument in my house. My dad had a friend, his name is Bobby, and he still traveled a lot. So he let my brother stay there. And probably about a month later, he joined the Army. And he was in the Army. He got his GED, finished. Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure it's still going.
Yeah.
So he went to the Army. How old was he when he went to the Army?
Almost 17, 18. He was in the Army when, right.
Okay.
Although he didn't go there. He was stationed in, I can't remember where he was. But they were getting ready, the week he was supposed to go fighting, they stopped the war. Hospital when he was, actually, he got home in time. My dad got sick. When he came back. Yep. My parents were in a car accident in Massanutten. A tree fell on the car.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't because of his injuries. Actually, he wasn't here. He got married. Well, he met his first wife, once he got home. But they got, yes. No, they actually went to the courthouse because they had been living together for a while, and she's from Mississippi. And I guess she told her mom that they were married. So when her mom, by now, my niece is like almost 2, because her mom was coming to visit, and she didn't want. And he went. My mother had a fit. My mom had such a fit, right? And he just dropped the bomb like, oh, we got married last week. I mean, they had been married like a week or so before he even told us. So.
Gets married.
He gets married. They're together in the academy, doing really well. By now, we kind of just try lives back together from losing my dad,
Right.
and adjust, because my dad did everything. So when he died, and this may sound crazy, my mother didn't even know how to write a check. Like, she knew how to write a check, but she didn't know where the bills were, how to pay the bills, how they were getting paid. Stepped in, had to help her. He didn't step in as much as I felt like he should have. But again, he just got away with so much more. I mean, it was just, sometimes I was almost jealous. Like, I was like, I'm telling you, I could have owed my mother $1. Now, I borrow $1 from her. Spanky would borrow $1 from her. She would call me and say, you got my $1? And I was like, oh my goodness, Spanky owes you $1 too. Well, he's working and he has to do that. Like, she would make so many excuses for him. It used to wear me out. I mean, it took a lot for me to adjust to their relationship.
Right.
Where I could have a functional relationship with him and not, like, be jealous or angry or,
Right.
Because I learned later in life, after I had my daughter, how much I cheated my mom. And I said that because I said I was a tomboy. So she didn't have the opportunity to buy me the frilly socks, but she did that with my daughter. So that's when I realized, wow, like she felt like I really cheated her, because I didn't do the frilly socks, I didn't do the dresses, I didn't. But my dad had 8 brothers. Father, so my Aunt Dorothy, who was my had 7 boys, and and I had a bunch of male cousins before I was even born. So I was born into a family with all guys,
Right.
And I was the first granddaughter, the first grandchild on my dad's side. They didn't know like Christmas, you couldn't tell my stuff from my brother's stuff. We all got that. It was just like the same. He got G.I. Joe, I got G.I. Jane. It was just like we all got the same. I realized later. Right. Not till later. Not till after I had Jazz. And once Blake was... Okay, Reagan was 2 when Spunky was...
Give me a little bit of background as to, right before...
My mom died. Well, our ritual... when my mom was living, after my dad died, Christmas Day, we would go out running around, and then we would come back together at my grandmother's. After my mom died, I adopted the ritual. So, and it was just my family and my brother's family. They would come to my house. We would have brunch, and we didn't exchange gifts at the house. We would wait until the evening, and this particular Christmas, he had just bought his house.
Which was 2000 and what?
7 then, because he was killed going to purchase their home. They hadn't been in the house. They hadn't been in the house for a minute. That particular Christmas, and he was kind of hesitant about asking me, beating around the bush. Always did the same thing every year. So this particular year, he didn't want to come to my house because he wanted to spend Christmas. Kids were a little older and could appreciate open gifts. So he was like, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "Well, this is our first year in the house." What? That's fine. I said, "We'll meet up." Now, by now, we're not going to my grandmother's. Now we're going to my aunt. Everybody's going to her house because now the family is grown and we outgrew. I said, "Okay, that's fine." And he was like, "You sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, we'll be good." But it turned out that we ended up going there for a minute. We went to his house. Right. So, that, and the big deal for Christmas, he loved to play jokes, and I was always the butt. So every year, they look forward to my gift. So, and I have all the gifts, all the prank gifts he has ever given me except one. And I'll tell you about that one. But he would, and it was really the presentation more than it was the gift. But it was some really crazy, like one year he gave me this clown. And I mean, I don't know where he got this clown, but it was one of the ugliest clowns I have ever seen in my life. And he put it in a trash bag, and he put the little foam things in the trash bag. He tied it up, and then he put that in a box, and he wrapped the box really, 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 really pretty. So, everybody is like, and all the cousins called him Uncle Spanky, like all the little cousins. They were like, "Come on, Uncle Spanky, let's hurry up, give out the gifts," because he plays Santa Claus every year. So they would hurry up and want to give out the gifts so they could get to my gift because it was always last. So this particular year, I see the box and I was like, excited because I was like, maybe I'm going to get something really nice this year. I mean, he would give me something nice, but he had to give me the prank gift first. So I'm unwrapping the gift, and I mean, I had to rip all the paper off. Then he had it taped up. I had to get all the tape out. Then it was the trash bag. So I'm looking, and I pull the trash bag out, and everybody's sitting there like, "Come on, open it." I tell you, I opened that trash bag and pulled out this clown, and all the kids, all of my little cousins started crying, and I mean, that's how ugly it was. So I was like, "Oh my goodness," and he is just cracking up. But then I did like this, and all of a sudden, I just started itching. This fool put itching powder on the clown. So for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm walking around looking like a junkie because I am itching. And he was crazy. He got the biggest kick out of that, the biggest kick. So let me tell you, that clown stayed in that bag in the trunk of my car for almost 3 years. My daughter was like, "It is no way you're bringing that in the house." And I was like, "You're right. I'm not bringing this in the house." So I left it tied up in the trunk. So we did an event where I work at Morgan, and it was at Morgan was helping me bring things in and out my car. So I sent him to my car, and his major was theater. So he went to my car, and I told him, "It's a trash bag in the car. Look in there and get whatever I asked him for." But Kelly, oh my goodness, where'd you get that clown from? And I was like, I said, "I'm sorry." He was like, "No, I love it." And I was like, "Really?" I said, "You can have it." But I told him the story, how I got it. And he was like, "You would give me that?" I said, "Yes." I said, "If you would appreciate something like that," I said, "you can have it." But prior to giving it to him, a month before that, I was going to throw it in the trash. And I was on the phone with my aunt. And I said, "I'm getting ready to throw this clown in the trash." And she was like, "You better not throw it away." And then a couple days later, you open the trunk and there's a bag in there. She said, "What you going to do then?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I got scared. And I said, "Okay, you're right. I'm just not going to throw it away." So I left it in the trunk. So I gave it to the little guy. And that's how I got rid of that clown. But I tell you, if I had not given it to him, it'd probably still be in my car.
You still had the itching powder?
I don't think so. It wears off after a while. Like, it wears off after a while, so I don't think it was on there anymore. But I tell you, that was something he has given me. I have a trash bag full of, like, all the gifts he has given me. And some of them make noises, and I don't even know where he finds them from. And every year, my aunt used to say, okay, this year we're going to help you. And I could never outdo him. And we used to come wrapping gifts because my dad was anal about how you wrap a box. So growing up in our house around Christmas time just wasn't fun for us because icicles on one at a time. You could not just throw them up there. You had to put them on one at a time, one branch at a time. Like, he didn't play. Every ball had to be in a certain place. It was just not fun. So me and Spunky used to say, oh my gosh, we cannot wait until we have our own place and can do what we want to do. Decorating the boxes, I promise you, the lid, the inside would be the same around the whole, like, it wouldn't be higher on one side, it would be the same. So much pride in his boxes, and my grandmother lived to get a box from him. Like, it could be empty. My mom's it could be empty. All she wanted was the box. All she wanted was his boxes. Like, everybody used to say, oh my God, who wrapped this box? And one year, he messed up. I think Spunky messed up the wreath that goes on. The dad had been collecting the tape, the brown tape. You know how you buy electrical tape? The brown piece that's inside?
Okay, right.
He had been collecting them. So he said, okay, I'm going to just make something to put on the door. So he made a Christmas tree. He put all of them together and made a Christmas tree. So he wrapped them all in aluminum foil individually. And then he connected them with a back. And then he took the lights and poked the white lights in each of the round things and lit it up. I mean, it was so pretty. We had so many people come knock on our door saying, oh my God, where'd you get this from? Because when he was putting it together, me and Spanky was sitting there going, oh my gosh, we were cracking up like, what is he doing? But it was so pretty. Like, it was pretty when he finished. But he was he was very artsy. We're very artsy, but just on different levels. He was on a whole nother level. But yeah. So he used to, Spanky would just, so our Christmas was really good that year. New Year's Eve, and I tell you, that New Year's Eve was so different because I worked. That's when I was working for Volunteers of America. And then, I'm going to go home. But I never had plans. Like, I never really did anything on New Year's Eve and my parents never went out New Year's Eve until after 12 o'clock. So they always bought in the New Year with us. So, and in my mind, I guess I was they used to tell us, whoever you bring the New Year in with, that's who you're going to have in your life that year. And I know it was like a myth, but that just kind of messed with me. So I just was very particular who I spent my New Year's Eve with. So this particular New Year's Eve, I said, I'm going to go to work because I was scheduled off. But I said, I'm going to go. My office was in the back and nobody's going to know I'm there. I'm going to do what I got to do and leave. I think my phone, I got there like at 8 and my phone rang not long after I got there and it was Spanky. And he was like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, hey, how are you? And he was like, no. He was just getting off of work. And I was like, okay, so he is just talking and so hype. And I'm like, what? Like, you need to go somewhere and go to bed. So he was like, well, I just called to see what you were doing. So we talked for a little while, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. I said, because I'm trying to get out of here at 2 o'clock. He was like, yeah, whatever. Okay, bye. So he hangs up. So I start doing trying to get my work done. Phone rings again. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what you doing? I'm working. I said, I'm trying to anyway. So we start having another conversation. And, he was telling me that he had to work that night. And I said, well, why are you on the phone? Like, go to bed. And he was like, I know I can't go to sleep right now. I need to do something. I said, well, do something, but stop calling me. Like, stop calling me. Why do you keep calling me? So he was like, I don't know. Let's just talk for a little while. So we had another conversation. And I was like, thinking to myself, okay, he needs to be asleep. And I need to get my work done because I'm trying to leave at 2. So we talked about, I don't even know what we talked about. Every time he called, we talked about something different. So I said, okay, I really have to go now. He was like, all right, me too. I started doing some more. The work phone, because at first he was calling me on my cell phone. Then the work phone rang, so I had to answer it. You know, good morning. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, you are not calling me again. So, but that conversation was so different. Like, he talked about blessed he felt and, you know, how excited he was that he was able to purchase a home there, and about the kid. I mean, he just talked about the kids. And I was on the phone like I don't know, words really couldn't express how I felt that time, because I was like, wow, like, I didn't think he thought about stuff like that. Like, I just really felt like he took all of that for granted, and I was wrong because he expressed it so differently. He made me real. So I just let him talk, because I was like, he must be on some kind of something right now, so I just let him talk. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, wow, you know, like, wow. So talking, I was like, I didn't want to be rude. I was like, you done? It was almost like, you done? So I said, all right, well, you need to go to sleep. I said, because, like I said, he had to work later. And I was like, now it's like going on 10 o'clock. So he said, I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to go to sleep. And I was like, all right, we'll go to sleep. I said, just call me later. I said, call me later. So he was like, all right, I'll just call you later. Phone rings again. And I know it may have been like a half an hour later. So it was my work phone again. So of course I had to answer it professionally. I gotta ask you something. And I was like, oh my goodness, you are calling me again. So that conversation, he was telling me how, I really don't want to go to work tonight. And I said, okay, don't go. I gotta go. I said, why do you have to go? In the house. You know, he said, so it was really important to me to be home for Chris said, and I don't want to mess up the person have to relieve me. You know, I don't want to mess up their plans. He was like, they probably got plans. And I said, okay, well, then go. I said, but whatever you decide to do, you need to get some sleep. I said, so what time do you have to be to work? He said, I got to be there at 6, but I'm going to go at 4. I'm going to just surprise the person and let them leave early. So they said, well, go get some rest, and we'll talk later. So he was like, all right, well, I ain't calling you sorry ass no more. And that's just how he talked to me sometimes. He's like, I'm not calling you sorry ass no more. And I was like, okay, that's fine with me, because I told you I'm trying to get out of here at 2 o'clock. So he was like, all right, bye. Bye. So we hung up. And I tell you, about a half an hour later, the phone rings again. And it may have been like a half an hour, 45 minutes. But to me, it was every minute.
Right.
Although some time had gone by, I still had not accomplished anything I needed to accomplish. None of my residents knew I was there. So it was just him. So he calls again. And I'm like, look, I don't know what is going on with you today. I mean, everything with him that day was different. You know, our conversations were different. His attitude was different. He just seemed way happier. Like, he was just in a different place to me. Like, I don't know. It just kind of wore me out. And I was like, wow. Like, it was a good thing. So, finally, at maybe, I don't know, because he called again after that. After we finished that conversation, he called one more time. And that conversation was kind of about my mom and, You know, we talked about, you know, how the holidays have been without her, and, you know, how we have made our own, you know, traditions and just made the holidays special for us. And, you know, and he kind of was like, you know, I mean, I know I don't tell you all the time, but you know, I do love you, right? And I was like, aw. And he was like, oh, don't give me that shit. Like, don't be like, aw. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. But he was like trying to be like hard, talk about, oh, my ass, you know. I mean, he just was like, oh, shit, nothing. Girl, you know I love you. And I was like, I love you too. And I mean, then he kind of was like, no, on a serious tip. Like, I know I don't tell you a lot, but I do love you, and, you know, took me back. And I was like, took you back? And he was like, yeah, because, you know, after Mommy died. So he went way back. So I felt like that must have still been kind of bothering him. And I said, let me tell you something. I said, when you came to the house Thanksgiving Day, I was good. I said, but then when you apologized and in front of everybody, and then you said you love me, and I mean, and I knew he loved me. Like, it's never been a doubt, but he just was not that kind of, like, now he was that way with his kids, but me, I guess, that's my sister, you know. So, and I told him, I said, when you apologized that day and told me you loved me, and we hugged and we cried, I was good. So I didn't want him to carry any of that. You know, I said, you went through what you went through, and you good now. Like, we're good, so I'm good. So he was like, all right, I'm just making sure. We talked for a little while longer. And I said, all right, now, really? So now it's like 10 of 2. And I said, I got 10 minutes before I have to get off, and I have not accomplished anything. I said, so now I'm hanging out with you, and I'm going to put this stuff back in a pile and deal with it when I come back to work. He was like, all right, whatever. I ain't calling you no more. Click up. And he just hangs up the phone. And I was sitting there going, I know he didn't just hang up on me. Like, no sooner than I said that, the phone rings. And I said, what? He said, I just called to tell you he said, I just called back to tell you I love you. And I said, I love you too. He was like, whatever. And he hangs up. And that's the last conversation we had. Last conversation we had. Saying whatever, and then calling me back saying, I love you. I never would have thought that would be our last conversation. Or last conversations. But I'm telling you, from 8 o'clock to about 10 of 2, he called me, it seemed like every minute. And just some of the stuff we talked about just really blew my mind. I never would have thought. Never. That just wore me out. After the fact, because after that, you know, I went home. Well, I think I stopped at the grocery store. I got some stuff because, you know, I'm letting Jazz have some company. This was David's first year wanting to go out, you know, so as a mother, I'm kind of feeling some kind of way because I told you how I want everybody with me on, and then you go out. But I was like, okay, you go out, you know, Sean DJs, so, and really wasn't kicking it like that, so he had to DJ that night. So we were up to a certain point, and then David, you know, went out with his girlfriend and his friends, and it was just Jazz and I and her two, well, my little cousin and one of her left at the house. And I mean, they baked and cooked. I cooked for them, and they baked and they played, and I took a nap, and, you know, I mean, it was a normal New Year's Eve in my house, but I never thought, you know, and a couple times I was like, let me call and make sure he went to work. And then I would get sidetracked and you know, I did something else and forgot. And so when I laid down, I think I got up about, I don't know, after 10. And I told the girls, I said, all right, we got to clean up, because that was another thing my mom used to tell us. If you go into New Year's with a dirty house, you're going to have a dirty house all year. She used to tell us that about our clothes. I think she just was setting us up. If you have dirty clothes in your laundry basket, you're going to have dirty clothes in your laundry basket all year. And me and Spike used to say, well, at some point, it's going to be dirty clothes in your laundry basket because you wearing clothes. But of course, that didn't come till later in life when we thought about, really put thought into the stuff she would tell us. So, you know, I'm still cleaning. I'm like, okay, we got to clean up. We got to clean up this mess, clean up these dishes. You know, they had made gingerbread houses. It was a mess. But they didn't bother me, so I was fine. So they were downstairs listening to music, and I was upstairs, and I guess I called them upstairs about quarter, and we turned on the television. So whatever station, comes on, because that's from New York. Right. That's the one we watched. So we were in the room, and we watching that, and about, I guess, 5 of 12, because the ball 5 of 12 is when they flat. And I saw that and was like, oh my God. And I promise you I knew it was my brother. I don't know. I can't even explain how I knew. But I knew something, I just knew. And I don't even know what the girls were doing. They didn't even see it. So when I saw it, I immediately called Susan. And she answered the phone, and I guess my relationship with her was really close, but I always played a lot on the phone when I called there. So I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, what do you think I'm doing? It's New Year's Eve. I'm sitting here with the kids. We waiting for the ball to dry. What are you doing? And I was like, call my brother and have him call me right away. And she was like, what? I said, call Spanky and have him call me right away. And she was like, Happy New Year to you, before he says it to me. And I said, yeah, you're right. I said, I was the first female in his life, because we used to always joke about, you know, stuff like that. I said, you forget. I was the first female in his life other than my mother. I said, and I'm always going to be that person to him. I said, so yeah, I want him to call me first so I can say it first. So she was like, yeah, whatever. And she kind of laughed it off. And I tried to laugh, but I knew she didn't see what I had saw. So we hang up. By the time she called me back, it was already New Year's Eve. I mean, the New Year, the ball had already dropped. So the girls were in the room making a whole bunch of noise, yelling. And I didn't answer my phone because they were making so much noise. So after it died down a little, I told them, okay, go downstairs. And I was like, go downstairs. So I called her right back. So by now it's like 2 minutes after, maybe 3 minutes after 12. And hey, she was like, hey. And she said, you know, it's kind of strange, but your brother has not called me back yet. And I was like, always calls, you know, right at 12 o'clock to say Happy New Year to me and the kids. And she said, he hasn't called yet. So I took a deep breath and I said, look, when I called you the first time, I said, across the screen said 95, 395, whatever. And I knew that's where he was going to part, where he was going to be working that evening. I said it again. I said, so you need to call somebody and find out what's going on. I need to know if that was my brother. Don't ask me why I put it all on her. Like, I don't know. I could have did it, but I don't even know why I told her to do it. So she was like, okay. So we hang up, and I'm like just pacing the floor. And I know she called me right back, but it seemed like eternity. Like when she called back, she was like, nobody's answering. And I was like, what do you mean nobody's answering? Rodney, that was one of his friends who is, nobody's answering. I said, okay, call police headquarters, but do something and call me back. So again, I'm kind of putting it on her. So she called back. So when I hung up with her, while I was waiting for her, I called my grandparents and said Happy New Year, and they said Happy New Year, but they had seen it, but they didn't know if I had, so they didn't say anything to me, and I didn't say anything to them. We just kind of went through the motions. But then when I was talking to them, Susan calling, so I told my grandparents, I'll call you guys right back. So when I clicked over to Susan, she was like, Kelly, that was your brother. And I was like, what? She was like, it was Courtney. She was the only one in the world that called him Courtney. And I was like, oh my God. I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to the scene. And she, what do you mean you leaving? She was like, what about me? I was like, what about you? You know, I'm like, I have to get to my brother. And she was like, oh my God, please don't leave me. She said, please don't leave me. Now, keep in mind, they lived in Hampstead, Maryland. So she said, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. She was like, but don't leave me. So I was like, okay, I won't leave. So I hung up. I called my grandparents back, and I told them, and my grandfather said, well, we saw it, flash or whatever. He said, but we didn't know if you had seen it. That's why we didn't say anything. So Pop said, your grandmother's sitting right here, and, you know, just call us back. So I told him, I said, okay, I'll call you back when I hear something. So I called my Uncle Wayne, and I told him what I saw, and I asked him to make some calls to send out. And then in the meantime, Derek, there was another one, Casey, and my cousin Aaron are really close. And Casey always stayed with them on New Year's Eve. So I knew Casey would be over there. So I called my Uncle Derek, and I told him, you know, what I heard, and he just kept saying, you lying. You know, you kind of look at the phone and be like, why would I be lying about something like that? And I was like, no, I'm not lying. I was like, I'm serious. Like, you know, I just saw it on the news. Susan called police headquarters. It's been confirmed. It was Spanky, but I don't know anything else. Well, in the meantime, my Uncle Wayne is calling me back. I said, that's Uncle Wayne. I'll call you right back. So Uncle Wayne was like, Kelly Boop? And I was like, yes, Uncle Wayne. He was like, that was Courtney sensing going to the scene. He said, just get down to the... So then I'm like, okay. You know, I'm like, okay, I can breathe. I can do critical. You know, I could do that. So I clicked back over and told my Uncle Derek. So my Uncle Derek was like, hey, we had it down there. And I was like, okay. And I know, I wasn't even thinking. I said, well, you think Casey and Aaron will come over here with the girls? And he's like, probably not. You know, Casey is going to want to be, and I was like, you're right. I don't even know what I was thinking about. I was like, okay. So, hang up with him. Then I called Susan back, and I said, I talked to my Uncle Wayne, and stable condition. I said, so, where you at? Like, I'm not going to the scene anymore. I said, we're just going to go down to the hospital and hurry up and get here. And she was like, okay, I'm trying to get the kids straight. I was like, just get here. So, I tell you, that was the longest wait of my life. It seemed like it took her forever. She couldn't even drive because she was upset, so she got her neighbor. She went and told her neighbor, was like, I'll take you guys. So she said he drove so slow. She said, Kelly, I was in the car going, oh my God, will he hurry up? Like, she said he was driving so slow. So they finally get to the house. And at this point, I hadn't even shared any of this with Jazz. So, by the time Susan came, I told Jazz, you know, Uncle Spanky was in an accident, and we getting ready to go down to the hospital. Be back. And that's all I told her. And I told her, y'all keep an eye on Blake and Reagan. So they was like, okay. So we leave them in the house, and we get in the car, and we drive down to the hospital. And you know, on the way down to the hospital, we were just like kind of joking and laughing and singing and like, I don't know. I don't know if it was to ease our minds or whatever, and just the conversations we were having. So we get down to the hospital, and I remember turning on, I guess that's wherever emergency was, and we saw like, I don't even know if this is, you know, where we're supposed to go in. She was like, me either. I said, all right, I'm going to ask you. Well, I stopped in the middle of the street, and I opened the door, and I was like, excuse me. So it was a female officer, authority police, and then the other police officers were from brother down here, Courtney Brooks. And she was like, oh, yes. Who are you? And I said, I'm his sister, and this is, and before I could say fiance, she was like, okay, come on, I'll just take you up. And I was like, sitting there, my car is in the middle of the street, and it's running. I said, where can I park? She said, leave it right there. And I was like, it's running. She said, leave it right there running. And I was like, just looking at it, she said, trust me, we will make sure your car is parked and you get your keys and all of that. She said, I just want to get you upstairs. So I was like, okay. So I told Susan, I was like, come on. She said, leave the car right here. So Susan says, but it's running. And I said, I know. That's what I told her. Susan said, but it's in the middle of the street. And I looked at her. I said, I just told her all of that. And she told me, leave it and come on. I said, so get out and come on. So she grabbed all her stuff. I ran back and got my purse. So we're walking with her. And as we're walking, and I asked her, I said, so how's Spanky doing? And she said, well, you know, you'll see when you get upstairs. She said, you know, and I said, well, is he okay? Like, is he doing okay? And she said, well, wait till you get with the rest of the family. And I promise you, I knew in that instant that he wasn't okay. And I really stopped walking. Like, her and Susan kept walking, and I stopped. And I said, you can't tell me now? Like, I was kind of getting upset. And I was like, you can't tell me now? And she was like, well, it's just best that we tell, you know, everybody together. And I'm like, so now my heart, like, is, like, really racing, and I'm really, like, nervous. So the elevator, going upstairs, going to the second floor, whatever floor it was on, and I promise you, it was so quiet in that elevator. Like, everybody was just looking and, like, you know, didn't know what to say. So the doors open, and I remember it was a hallway, and we walked a few steps, and it was big double doors that opened up into this big room. And when those double doors opened, I promise you, it was at least 200 police officers from everywhere in this room. I mean, that room was packed with police officers, and I was looking like, oh my goodness, from every agency. I think every agency was represented in that room. So, but out of all of the police officers, I kind of looked to my left and saw one of his really close friends over in a corner by himself. So we made eye contact, and I kind of smiled at him, like, to say hi, and he looked at me and put his head down. And that was just more confirmation that something was really wrong. So we walked through all of these police, and we get to a doorway that led into another really big room. Well, that's where all my family was. So I'm looking at everybody that's down in there, and I'm like, how did all of y'all beat us down here? And I'm trying to figure out how everybody that was in there found out and got down there, as, you know, way before we did. So when I got to the entrance of the doorway and I saw everybody, I said, and that's what I said, I was like, how y'all beat us down here? But I'm still, like, you know, thinking he's okay. So everybody was just looking, and I can vividly, to this day, if I could draw, I could draw stick people, but I could draw you the room. I could draw you where everybody was sitting. I could probably tell you what they had on, but more importantly, the looks on their faces, I will never forget. I will never forget. I will never forget how my niece looked. I mean, if she was sitting in a fetal position, my grandmother was in the middle of the room in a chair. I will never forget how she looked. I remember all of that, but what I don't remember, and I don't even know when I said, and then once I asked them, how'd you guys beat us down here? I then said, why y'all look like this? What's wrong? And somebody, I don't know who it was. I don't even know I don't know whose voice it was. I don't know whether it was a male, female. I don't know. They said, he's gone. And I was like, what? And they said, the same person said, he's gone again. And I just, like, lost it. And Susan was directly behind me. So she fell, and I really fell on her. I mean, and I just remember, like, crying. Like, the rest of the night, I was a mess. And then I found out he died at the scene. Like, he died at, like, 11:30, 5. But they brought him back to the hospital and still tried to do all that they could do. I mean, and I just remember crying, like, on the floor. And then somebody came and picked me up and picked Susan up. I don't know who that was. And I remember being in my uncle Derek's arms and crying. And I got sick, and I had to go back out into the bigger hallway where all the police officers were. And I just got myself together a little bit, went back in the room. And I mean, every time I saw somebody, I just started crying. Like, everybody was just in there crying. It was just like, I couldn't believe. Somebody had told me in a million years that was going to happen. I was like, nope. Especially based on how our day started. Like, I mean, he was talking about how that year was going to be like a really good year, and we were going to do this, and we were going to do this, and I'm going to do this better, and you know, let's make plans to do this together. Every year he used to try to get me to go to New Orleans with them. And I said, okay, that's my promise. I promise this year I'm going to go to New Orleans. Never happened. I mean, I don't know. It was so many lessons in this for me anyway. But, I mean, I don't even know what time we got down to the hospital. But I know we were there till almost 5 o'clock. Started leaving. The doctors, you know, addressed the family again because my Aunt Rochelle was the first one there at Leadenhall. And Leadenhall Baptist Church is right not far from there. My grandmother called her. So she was the first one there. So she was the first to find out. So I guess they just told people as they came. So Susan and I were really the last two to find out. We were the last two down there. So, no, that's not true. Because later that evening, my Uncle Scott, the last one to come down there, left there, and they were telling them that he was just, I guess I didn't want to see him because Frankie and I were with my mom when she died. So, literally, we sat with her the entire night. And we were with her when she took her last breath at 5:23. And I tell you, it took me so long to get that image out of my mind because she passed from cancer. So, she just did not look like herself. Like, she did not look like herself. Her skin was real. It took me a really long time to get that image out of my mind. Like, every time I thought about my mom, I thought about her in that image. And that just, out. And I used to say, I don't know if it was good that I was there or not. Like, you know, I don't know if I had to do it all over again. I may have been in the same house, but I don't know that I would have sat there we sat there for almost 8 hours in a rocking chair. Both of us. He taped a whole bunch of her favorite songs, and we played the tape, and him and I sat in these rocking chairs, and we rocked for 8 hours, listening to that music, watching my mother. So, and I'll never forget when she took her last breath. She sat up in the bed and looked at us like this, and we looked at it, and you could see, like, that was the end, and Spanky was sitting there going, go see if she gone. I was like, oh, now you want to, you know, tell me I'm the oldest. Like, you want to recognize that I'm the oldest. I said, no, you go. He was like, no, I can't. So, after we went through that a couple minutes, I went over there and then laid back. Like, it just amazed me how she died, just sitting up looking at us. That was just, oh my goodness. That was something. So, when Casey and Susan kept saying they really wanted to, for me, I was like, oh no. I knew I couldn't do that again. I knew I could not do that again. And I can't even remember. Christmas Day. Christmas was the last day I saw him. And then New Year's Eve was that week, off and on that week. But that day I talked to him, it seemed like all day. So I didn't want to see him. They kind of struggled with that, and I told my niece, they say you don't want to see him, you don't want to see him. I said, not seeing him. Left with her mom. Susan left with her parents. What came down by then. I left with my Uncle Derek. Now I wanted to drive home. One, I didn't know where they put my car. I didn't know who had my keys. And the police officer that bought us up was still there, and she was like, and I think she said it like on purpose so I wouldn't be able to drive. Like, well, I gave him the officer, we'll make sure the car gets to your house, da-da-da. My uncle was like, I'm taking her home anyway. I didn't want to be around anybody. Like, I just wanted to be by myself. So, all the way home, and I just was looking out the window. I cried all the way home. And my cousin Aaron held my hand while I was sitting in the bed. Right before we get to my house, yelling and screaming. So I looked to my left, and my son is in the middle of the side street crying. Laid out in the middle of the street crying. And his girlfriend at the time, Lauren, was sitting there, just sitting in the middle of the street with them. And my neighbors, two of my neighbors were at their front door yelling, is everything? And I don't think my Uncle Derek, well, I know he didn't see him, because I was like, stop the car. And he slams on brakes. And I was like, that's David. So I jump out the car and I go running over to him. And he was just crying. I started crying again, and he was like, Mommy, why is this happening? What is going on? I don't understand it. So that was a whole ordeal like that. I don't even think they went in the house. I think they just kept going. I'm not sure. Because when I finally got David to get up and come in the house, my Uncle Jeff and my Aunt Nona, who lives right around the corner from us, were in there with the kids. Susan and her parents came in right after us to get Blake and Reagan. They left. But my Uncle Jeff and my Aunt Nona, and I don't know why they did it, but they told David before I got there, obviously. So I was really feeling some kind of way because they know how he reacts. And they knew David and my brother were like, everything my brother did, David wanted to do. Spanky got piercings. David was like, Mom, when I turn 16, can I get an earring? Mom, when I turn 18, can I get a tattoo? Because Uncle Spunky said, everything was Uncle Spunky said. So my brother took him to get his first piercing that lasted every bit of 2 months, maybe. And when he turned 18, he took him to get his first tattoo. So they were really close. So I don't even know what made them tell. I mean, and I know they didn't mean any harm, but David was probably like, what y'all doing here? And where's my mother? And, so that's probably why they told him. So, and I didn't even, and to back up, to go back to the hospital, I didn't even tell Sean, like, everybody had started leaving, and I remember my Aunt Yolanda, myself, Susan, and my Uncle Scott, because I said he came late. We were sitting out in the hallway, leaning up against the window, and Susan, I need a cigarette. And I was like, oh my God, you have not smoked in years. She said, yep, and I'm about to start. And she started smoking again that day, that morning. So she was smoking a cigarette, and my Aunt Yolanda said something. I was like, oh. So, and like I said,
Sean, your husband.
Yes, Sean, my husband at that time. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I called him and there was so much music in the background because he's DJing. So he was like, "Hello," and I was like, "Hello." He was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, hold up." So I guess he caught himself going somewhere a little bit more quiet, but it was just as much noise. And he was like, "What'd you say?" And I said, "Spanky was killed tonight." He was like, "Oh my God. Okay, well, all right. I'm gonna just meet y'all at where are you now?" And I said, "I'm at the hospital, but we're not gonna be here long because it's like going on 5 o'clock, you know." He was like, "Okay, I'll see you at home. I'll see you at home." So I was like, "Okay." So by the time he got home, well, when I got David in the house and the kids left, Jazz's girlfriend's mom had come. She found out what happened, so she came and got her daughter, left. And it was just like, I just didn't know what to do. David and Jazz and Ileana went downstairs. I went upstairs. And I just remember standing in the middle of my bedroom, like, I was just standing in the middle of the floor. Like, I had no clue. I had no clue how I was going to get through this. Like, I didn't. So I heard Sean's key. Like, it took him forever to get there. But again, my time was so off. So he probably, because of the distance he had to drive, he probably did get there as soon as he could. Attitude, because, you know, I expected you there like this. So when he came upstairs, he got to the entrance of the bedroom, and I just started busting out crying, and I just kind of fell. I felt my body go limp, and he just like caught me, and he was just all he could say was, I got you. And he was like, "I know we haven't been doing well, and we've been going through a lot, but I promise I'm gonna be here for you," reassuring me that it was gonna be okay, not okay. And then I don't know, I just, you know, we went downstairs. So by now, went downstairs to talk to the kids. Well, he went downstairs. I stayed upstairs and tried to get myself together. He went downstairs, and when I got myself together, I went downstairs, and Jazz was sitting on his lap on the sofa, and David was sitting next to him, and they were just all just sitting there. So I came downstairs, and I sat beside David, and David just started crying. And then Nanny, and then Uncle Spanky, you know. Jazz fell asleep in Sean's lap. Have an opportunity before he got there to really tell her what happened. At that point, she knew. So I think for her, it was just like, let me just go to sleep. So she went to sleep. So David and Jazz, well, Sean took Jazz upstairs. And I really think they slept. He put Jazz in David's room. We were down in the basement, and my aunt, it seemed like every time I saw somebody, I would just cry again. So as soon as they came down the basement and looked at me, I just started crying again. And my Aunt Albie, that was my mom's youngest sister, actually works. She's a nurse at Shock Trauma. That was the first year in like 6 years she didn't work New Year's Eve. She always worked New Year's Eve. That was the first year since she had been working down there. I don't even know how she would have handled it had she been down there and that had happened. So it's like everything, I think everything that year happened for a reason. Like, so, you know, she gave me a hug, and I started crying again, saying, I just, you know, get through this. And, you know, she started crying, reassuring me that it would be okay. And then, by then the television, Sean had turned the TV on for something, so now it's all over everything. You know, they showing the crash site, and I mean, we are just like boo-hooing. And I'm looking at him like, okay, you need to cut this off. Like, I can't do this. So he cuts the television off, and then we just sitting there looking around. So, and I think my uncle was with them too. I think it was my Uncle Dennis. So they finally left. Sean was like, come on. I think it's like 7. I don't even know what time it is, but it's like 7 something in the morning. So he goes up and he goes to bed. And I laid there for a little while, but I couldn't. I remember calling my director that I worked to let them know I wasn't coming. I guess she figured, like, I couldn't believe that was on my mind. Like, you know, I got to take care. And I called Tommy about 2 weeks after Tommy lost his mom. Accelerated and crashed into the bus stop. Where you sit under, she crashed into that. And my dad met him somehow a couple weeks after that. And I tell you, it was like he had a key to alarm code. We was like, who is this person he is bringing in? He came, introduced us. This is Tommy. Tommy, this is my wife and my kids. And he has been in my life ever since. I was like 17. I was 17, and to this day, Tommy and I are still really good friends. We both together. Like, he is still in my life like that. So, he was the first person I called. And his wife answered the phone. Daria answered the phone, and I started crying, and I was like, is Tommy there? She was like, yeah. I don't want to tell you, and then got to turn around and tell him, but she was like, okay. So she gets him on the phone, and I told both. So, you know, I went through that with him, and then I just was calling people, and I don't even know if after a while, it was almost like I was calling people to invite them to a party. You know, it was like, oh, I'm just calling to let you know. It got so like, oh, I'm just calling to let you know Spanky was killed last night. I think I was so numb by then that's just how. And I know they were saying, well, she telling us like, and then they were crying. I was on the phone. By then I couldn't cry no more. You know, so I'm just, you alright? And I remember some people say, hell no, I ain't alright. What do you mean about alright? But I couldn't, I had nothing left in me. Nothing. Like, I was done. And I think I laid down for a while. The rest of that day, like, New Year's Day, was just me laying around, process all that had happened, you know, and make sense of what didn't really make sense to me at all. Like, you know, I had so many conversations with God, like, okay, I don't know what the heck, like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't, I was like, I don't know if I'm being punished. I don't know if you're trying to teach me a lesson, but first it was my dad, then it was my mom, now it's my brother. Like, really? Like, now I'm so by myself? I don't know. The department reached out throughout that day, and I remember Spanky's, one of Spanky's sergeants came to the reg, and I tell you, him and his wife and his sister, so much food, it was not funny. He came to the house with ginormous bowls of macaroni salad, potato salad, chicken salad, and you would think. So Sean calls me downstairs because Sean is like answering the phone. I don't want to talk to nobody. Find out who it is. He's answering the door, like, because I get, you know, just screening, because I told him I just can't do people right. So when Greg came, you know, he was in his uniform, everything, and he had all of this stuff. And I go in the kitchen, and I saw all that food, and I started busting out crying again. And I was actually angry, because I was like, where am I going to put all this food? I don't want all of it. And I don't even like any of it. Like, I don't even eat salads. I don't eat potato salad. I don't eat macaroni salad. I don't eat anything with mayonnaise in it. So I'm like, I'm not even going to benefit from any of this. So Sean was like, I heard Sean say, excuse me 1 second. So Sean came in the kitchen. He was like, what's wrong? I was like, I can't find any place to put all of this. And Sean was like, calm down, calm down. Just calm. So I got myself together and I went back out there. And, you know, he was giving his condolence. Let him know, da-da-da-da. So I'm sitting there, and I know I was looking like, whatever. I just don't feel like this right now. So when he left, we go back in the kitchen. And I started crying again. And I mean, the refrigerator, you needed a Mack truck for all the food that they had prepared, and I couldn't believe it was so much in such a little time. So, you know, we made space. And the funny thing about it is it was gone by the end of the day. Like, so many people were coming in and out that day. It was, everything he bought was gone by the end of the day. So I guess it was a good thing. We had it anyway. But, throughout, I think the next couple days, we had to go to Maryland Transportation Headquarters to actually plan the service. And that's when I met, that was Spanky's major, and I met the chief of police, and that was chief of police for the state. He got moved to the state. And there was some other people in there I can't remember in my family. Heavy until Dawn started crying at first, giving her sympathy. Of course, they called him Brooks. You know, how Brooks was really going to be missed. I think what lightened the mood was they started telling stories about him. And I tell you, we just started cracking up because I was like, yep, that was my brother. I told you, he didn't care who you were. He didn't care your rank. He didn't care your position. He would crack on the president if he had the opportunity to. So they were just telling us some of the practical jokes that he played. Like on one of his majors, he asked him to move his car. So they have parking spaces behind their offices where they're supposed to park. Well, Spanky took his police vehicle all the way over. This is when they were stationed at the airport, when he was working at the airport. Vehicle all the way over to where the visitors park, and on the top floor. So, you know, you need a shuttle to get over there. So he said he got off at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And he said he went out back and didn't see his patrol car. So he said he called Spanky. He was like, Brooks, where's my car? Like, I asked you. Spanky said, oh, you'll find it at the parking garage on the top floor. And started busting out laughing. He just hung up on him. And his major said, I was on that phone. Didn't care. And there was another officer in there. He said sometimes they had to switch patrol cars. And he said whenever Spanky had his car, when he got back in, everything was on. Like everything. The music was up loud, the siren, everything was on. And he said, I never thought that he would not do it. So every time I got in the car, everything would come on and I would be sitting there going, he got me again. He said, I never even thought that he would not do it. I thought one day he's just not going to do it. He said he did it every time he got my car. He did it. So that kind of got, you know, the mood a little light, and we were able to move forward with the service, the planning of the service. So they were asking, you know, questions like, who do you want to have the body? So really, because I was the next of kin, everybody was kind of looking at me. And all I could remember, I told you how my mom looked when she took her last breath. And Vaughn Green had her body. And I'm telling you, when I saw my mother, first of all, I was really scared to see my mom when they had the family hour, because I just did not know what to expect. But when I saw my mom, I was she looked gorgeous. Like, she looked so at peace and so beautiful, and her skin complexion it was just her. She looked like she was sleeping. She looked nothing like she looked that evening. I mean, that morning she took her last breath. She looked nothing like that. Like, I was amazed. So, of course, I went right to Vaughn. You know, I said, well, I want Vaughn Green. So, Danielle was like, I think that's a good choice because, and she gave all her reasons why. So she said, do you have a church in mind? And my brother had joined Ledden Hall years ago. So I said, well, we can have it at Ledden Hall. You know, that's really our family church. You know, my grandmother's been Rick. And my mom attended there. My aunts go there. So I was like, Ledden Hall. And they was looking at me like, no, that's not going to work. And I'm like, what do you mean that's not going to work? She was like, it's not. So, you know, I was like, okay, well, what do you suggest? So she said the cathedral on Charles Street. And I'm thinking, the last time I had been in, I graduated. My graduation was in that church. And it seemed like it took me 14 years just to get down that aisle to get my diploma. And I'm sitting there going, the cathedral? And she was like, oh, you're going to need the cathedral. And I said, well, I need to ask you this. Do you want us to plan the funeral? You know, take care of all the arrangements? And that was a no-brainer. I was like, oh, you can do it. I said, just tell me what role we need to play, but you can handle everything. And I promise you, they handled everything down to the flowers. Like, we didn't have to, we picked out the casket, helped. We picked out the pictures that we wanted, the slide presentation and the pictures to go in the obituary. Well, we kind of helped write the obituary. We gave them all the information they needed. They composed it. Like that, all we had to do was give them the information. They composed the obituary. They put it all together. I mean, they did everything. And when she said, let us do it, I didn't really know or understand the magnitude of let them do it. I don't think anybody could have prepared me for that funeral at all. At all. Like, so once I agreed, or we agreed, she said, okay, we just somebody to officiate the service. So my dad's side of the family is Catholic. I'm Baptist, and I don't even think Susan attends church. So, again, they just looking at me, and I was like, okay, well, let me call my pastor. So, you know, they sitting around talking about other things, and I called my pastor, and I was like, hey, and he knew what had happened, and I told him, I said, I'm sitting here, we're trying to plan when, and I told him when, and he was like, okay. He was like, yeah, I should be able to do that. And I said, well, it's going to be at the cathedral. Isn't that a Catholic church? And I was like, yeah. He said, we're Baptist. He said, was your brother Catholic? I was like, no. He said, you got the right church? And I'm like, yeah. So we went back and forth for like 5 minutes. I was like, you know what? I can't do this with you right now. And my aunt was sitting there looking at me like, she not talking to me. I said, here, I can't do this. Just talk to him. Just because I can't do this. So, because he just was like real concerned about that. So my aunt explained to him why they were using the cathedral and all of that. So did everything that day. We did everything that day except the casket. The next day we went and picked up. I tried to keep Susan and Casey as involved as possible. You know, it was so much. It was just so much tension between us at this point. I guess because although her and Spanky weren't married, she felt like she had certain rights. You know, I'm the sister, so I'm really the next to kin, and then there's my niece. So it was kind of like everybody was at odds, kinda, and it was not intentional. You know, I don't know. It just kind of all started falling apart after a while of relationships because of, I guess, everybody's position in his life, you know. So tried to keep them as involved as possible. And I think, like, I know her parents felt like she was going to light it or something because she was white, you know, and so all of us and her, and I think that's how her parents saw it, all of us and her, although it wasn't like that. And it was one, I can't remember what they asked me. It was something to do with insurance. So I don't know what it was, but her dad was like, well, Susan will handle that. You know, but it was kind of like, you know, I looked at him like, okay, like, it's not that serious. But that's what made me realize, you know, that it was something out the casket, and we let them know what kind of flowers we wanted. They ordered the they did everything. I did not have to talk to Vaughn Green. I was not, I didn't have to worry about anybody getting paid. Like, when I say they did everything, they did everything. They did everything. And like I said, nobody could have prepared me for that day. That day, the day of the funeral, wow, we had to leave from 2 locations. So, well, after we left the meeting, everybody went their separate ways. I did, and I guess that week was kind of just doing stuff to stay busy, getting the kids' outfits. And it just so happened I wore the same outfit to my brother's funeral that I wore to my mom's, and didn't even realize it until I saw some pictures. And that's just like, at my mom's funeral, the earrings that I wore were the earrings she had on her obituary. Like, it just, some of the stuff that happened after, I didn't notice till after the fact. And I think somebody brought that to my attention. They was like, you got on the same earrings. You're wearing the same earrings that your mom has on in her picture. And then again, I wore the same exact outfit for Spanky's funeral that I wore for my mom's, and didn't even realize that's what I wore until somebody. And I was like, oh my gosh, should I change? And they was like, no, I'm not saying it, But I don't know. It just happened that way. But that day, we had to leave from, okay, so the viewing was all day Saturday, and all day Saturday we had to be at Vaughn Green's on Liberty Road, and from 12 to 6, everywhere we went, we got a police escort. So, the kids was pumped about that. And from the day we planned the funeral up until like 3 or 4 days after we buried Spanky, we had a police right out front the house for anything. Like, they wouldn't even let people come knock on the door unless, like, you had to say, oh, I'm Kelly's cousin, and they would call in the house, so-and-so is outside, you want to see him? Like, and the kids left one day, and I said, where you guys going? And they said, oh, we're going to go down to the corner, dollar store, whatever. So I was like, okay. So they get outside, and the police officer asked them, well, where you guys going? And they told him, and he said, all right, jump in. And he took them, like, wherever they wanted to go, he took them. So after a while, they caught on, and they was like, oh, we liking this. And they let them play with the siren and do it. And I was like, why do y'all keep going to the store? And David said, oh, because the police officers take us wherever we want to go. I didn't even know that. I just thought he was sitting out there. And I was like, yo, leave him alone. Jazz was making them cupcakes and stuff, taking them food out there. He was like, oh, I can sit out here all year. He said, they feed me and they give me drink. He didn't even want to change shifts. Like, they had shifts. So, but I just thought, I was like, wow. Like, I didn't even know they were going to do that. So, he was out there all week. So that week after, we picked out the casket. And like I said, it was Saturday all day. And son left the house. They had a van come pick up everybody. And the people that couldn't fit in the van, they had cars for them. And then they had the motorcycle, what do you call it? Yeah, motorcade going all the way down Liberty Road. All the way down Liberty Road. Like, everywhere we went, they had the motorcycles. Everywhere we went. So, the viewing went well. That was all of our, they had the family time. That was, like, they had the room he was in, so we were of course, on the other side. So, Sean and I was standing, we were first, and then everybody was behind us. My kids were behind us, and else was behind them. And as they opened the doors, because it's, you think up to this point, I would have really, I think that was just like, wow, this is really real. Like, and they had 2 police guards on each end of his car. Oh my goodness, great! I just blacked out. I just caught me and took me over to the couch, and I just sat there and I just started crying. I was like, that is really him. Sitting there seeing everybody's expression and my fiance, like I felt so helpless. Like my kids, I couldn't even console my own kids. Like I was a mess. And I just sat there for most of that Saturday. I remember just like sitting around, just I hadn't seen in forever. Like, and just, I don't know, that was a lot. And they didn't have it on like a little, they had it on a big screen. I was like, oh my gosh. A lot. That was just a lot. And I had bought him he loved Notre Dame. Yes, he loved, let me tell you when he started liking them. Remember the movie,
The little kid, the Rudy?
Rudy. I tell you, the first time we saw that movie, he cried like a baby. Spanky cried on that movie. You ever remember Billy Jack? Oh my goodness. It was a movie called Billy Jack. He loved that too. So, but after he saw Rudy, he just loved them. So every holiday or every Christmas or his birthday, I would always buy him a hat or a t-shirt, and I tried to always remember which hat I got, and I had bought him a hat. Actually, I bought him a hat for his birthday. His birthday wasn't until July, but I had gone to a bowling tournament somewhere, and so different. I said, all right, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to save it for his birthday, because I had already given him his Christmas stuff, and I needed to save something. So I was like, I'm going to save this hat and give it to him for his birthday. And Jazz and David used to always laugh, because I always, like, even for Christmas, I would buy stuff in May. Oh, I'm buying this for Christmas for next year. And Jazz be like, the person might not even be here. She will not say that anymore now. She will not say that anymore now. Because they cracked on me when I told them I wasn't giving him that hat until July. And David was like, "Ma, Christmas." I was like, I already got his Christmas gift. I'm saving this for his birthday. But I ended up putting it in the casket. That was something. Then the funeral was, find out. So everybody was supposed to leave from my house. I know, and that it was a lot, because we ended up having, because they really tried to accommodate me and Susan. They needed a certain amount of limos, and we needed a certain amount. And it was no big deal, like, but I guess when they finalized everything, they realized that it was just going to be too much for everybody to leave from one location. So Susan's family left her parents' house, and we left from my house. But I think the way I found out kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because she thought I knew, and I felt like she should have told me, but she thought they would tell me. So I found out Sunday at the viewing, and I remember going to my Uncle Dennis saying, he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was telling him, that I was really pissed off, because I wanted everybody to be together. Like, I didn't want, everything was so separate. And to be honest, everything to me was black and white. You know what I mean? Everything was black and white. So, and I just didn't want that. I wanted everybody to leave from one location. I didn't even care if it was from her house or her mom's house. I just didn't want everything separate. And up to that point, everything started to be separate. So, like I said, it just looked black and white to me. So, when I found that out, I was just really upset. And I went to my uncle, and he was like, okay, because he was like my go-to person to put out my little temper tantrums and my little fires. So he was like, Kel, just calm down. I got it. So he came back to me, and my Uncle Wayne, they both came back to me and explained to me why they decided to leave from both locations. And of course it still didn't sit well with me, but I was like, whatever. So, and I still felt like she should have told me, you know. So Monday comes, and it's like a gazillion people at the house, like, and then it was like left from here, like, you know. But it takes a minute for me to really put things in perspective when I'm upset. So I remember looking out of Jazz's bedroom window, and I saw Vaughn Green on the other side of the street, like walking up and down the street on his cell phone, and I don't know who he was fussing at, but somebody was getting it. Like, he was laying somebody out. So I'm like, oh my God, did something go wrong? You know, like, what's going on? And I didn't find out until later that while we were leaving from separate places, we were supposed to be leaving at the same time. Well, they got to the church ahead of us. So when we got there, they was already in and seated. So again, it was this struggle, because I'm like, okay, how do you feel like you could go in first? And then, like, so we get to the church, and I said they couldn't have prepared me for that, because, oh my gosh, we left, I'm trying to think, lived on Croydon and Liberty Road. I think we went down Liberty Road to Northern Parkway. And they took Northern Parkway all the way to Tall Street, right. It was like 1 million people on the sides with signs, you know, the fire trucks. I mean, I just was blown away. I was blown. The people that they stopped, you know, and we used to always talk about how at a funeral, like, nobody respects funerals anymore. They don't stop. They don't, you know. People were stopping. I mean, people that didn't even know us. So that just amazed me. And I'm telling you, his procession line was so long. When we turned into the cathedral, we were parked. The cars couldn't even, I mean, it was people that had to get out on Northern Parkway and walk all the way up Northern Parkway and around the corner, because they could not get to the church. News people everywhere. It was thousands of people there. And that's why I said I would have never imagined. I was like, I know Spanky is in his glory. Like, all this for me. Like, I know he was like, wow. You know, and I remember not wanting to get out of the car, because it was this news person, like, at the window. And I sat there, I looked at Sean, I said, if you don't get him from out of my face, I am going to have a fit. So, Spanky's major came over to the car. But that's when I found, and then somebody came over and said, we don't want you to be upset, but Susan and her family are already in and have already been, and you know, they have everything blocked off. And she was like, I didn't mind Susan and her parents and the kids, but like everybody else, they have to find somewhere else to sit. Like, where are we gonna sit? Like, just the immediate family was supposed to be in the first couple, you know, but her whole family, so they had to go in there and make them move. Like, it was just stuff like that kind of, it was so divided, you know, and it didn't really need to be, to me. So I remember getting to that door saying, it is no way I'm going to make that. Aisle is like 5 miles long. And I just remember Sean being on one side, and I don't remember who. They really dragged me down the aisle. I could not walk. I couldn't walk. And just seeing the guards, right? I couldn't. So it was thousands of people there. I didn't even know the cathedral opened up on the sides, and it was it was packed. It was standing room. People were standing. It was amazing. I know he is just like in his glory. And out of all the people that spoke, my grandfather, I don't remember what my pastor preached about. I don't remember what people sang. I don't remember anything other than my grandfather getting up there, and out of all of the stuff he said, all I remember him saying was, it's very unfortunate that this had to happen because Spanky was just starting to grow up. And that's all I remember. And I don't even know why that stuck with me. And probably because it was true. He just bought his home. He was just starting to settle down. Talking about getting married and met. Had kids. So that was just all I remember in that funeral. And my daughter and son, the governor, was shaking everybody's hands. And so David tells Jazz, I dare you to say, hello, governor. Because it was a commercial. So, Jazz being Jazz and David being David, when he came up to shake Jazz's hand, she said, hello, governor, really loud. And everybody just started busting out laughing. And I'm looking at them, and he just grins and gives her a big old hug. It was like, oh, you're real special. That's what he said to Jazz, and kept walking, knock her block off. And my uncles were in the back saying, that is definitely your child. Do it. I'm like, she does anything you tell her to do. So, we left there. And again, on our way to the cemetery that whole day was just incredible. People were on 83 with signs. I mean, and even when I ride down 83 now, I promise you, I can tell you where people were standing. It was this guy in a punch buggy. He was standing beside his punch buggy, and he looked like hippie-ish, but he had a sign that said, we love you, thank you for your support. I mean, I could tell you what he had on. I could tell you exactly where he was standing. And when we got a little further down, I could tell you where the fire engines were stationed and how many were standing there on top of this overpass. They had a fire truck up there with sign. I mean, it was incredible. Coming around when you take 83 off of 695 and you come around that little, people were lined on Padonia. I think we took restaurant. Well, it's some restaurants on the left-hand side where that little sign thing. They had something up there. We're gonna miss you. And I remember going back to that restaurant a week or so after we buried my brother, and did asking for the manager. And I asked the manager, "Did you know my brother?" He was like, "No, but it just touched our hearts, and we just thought." That just amazed me. It just amazed me. The repast was at the Martins. Out there. It's a new Valley Mansion. It's called the Valley Mansion. Tell you, that whole experience was just, like I said, nobody could have ever prepared me for that. How you just have 1,000 people around you, and it was I just did not want to face. I didn't even think I could face what I had to face. I think I handled it way better than I thought I would, only because after my mom died, I just went through so much. I hit rock bottom for me. I hit rock bottom, and it took me 3 years to kind of get myself back together, where I felt like I was starting to function as a person again. And I said, if I hadn't learned what I learned in those 3 years, then my brother would have took me out of here. Like, it would have taken me out of here. I don't know if I would have been able to do it. I just felt like, after my mom died, not knowing what I was going through, not really being able to, what I was going through, I really thought I was going crazy. First I looked up bipolar disorder. So I said, I must be bipolar, because I felt like I was on a roller coaster. Some days I was good, bad, up, down, happy, sad, crying, laughing. It was just that drastic all the time. It was no happy medium. I was either happy or I was either sad. I was either crying or I was either happy. So I said, okay, I must be bipolar. And then I looked up depression. I was like, okay, I'm depressed and bipolar. Then I looked up manic depression. I was like, okay, I'm that. And then I'm looking up Alzheimer's because I couldn't remember a thing. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm in early onset of Alzheimer's. I felt like I was going crazy. And I remember saying, okay, it's got to be a reason that I'm going through this, but I never related anything I was going through to my mom dying. Never. Not one time. Never. So, my marriage falling apart. I'm falling apart. And I'm praying like, okay, God, you really have to bless me making some more money or something. No, like I said, my marriage is falling apart. So I know I'm not going to be living in this situation. I'm going to be living on my own. So I need to make more money. So I need to get out of this. And I was going through this when Spanky was actually still alive. So, I'm talking to him and, he's like, okay, I don't care what I have to do, but, I'll work an extra shift and help you because I don't want you and David and Jazz, you can't leave. I really felt like I was stuck in the situation I was in. So I was like, okay. So I was really pumped about that. And I was like, okay, I can do it. I can do this because, I had my brother's support. And, so needless to say, when he was killed, I was like, it is no way I'm going to be able to do this by myself. Now, I can't. I'm stuck. So I stayed in my situation for another year. Finally was like, okay. Let me tell you why I left. Let me tell you what gave me the nerve to leave. When Spanky, about 2 months after my mom died, it wasn't that long. My brother keeps talking about your mom is here. And they had a dog. And she said, we were sitting on the couch the other day. Wind or something came through. And she said, and the dog just went ballistic. And she said, your brother turned around and said, see, I told you my mother's here. And I was like, what? So in between him really not reaching out like, we used to, he called me a couple times and told me that, expressed that he felt like my mom was there, whatever. So, again, I'm feeling some kind of way, because why she come to see you? She ain't come to see me. I need her too. I just don't understand. So I was like, don't call me no more with this. Because now I'm jealous. She even come to see you. She ain't here and she come to see you. So I'm feeling some kind of way. So I just dismissed it. I was like, all of them crazy over there. I don't even want to hear it anymore. So one day, I don't know what happened. I don't even remember what happened, but I went to sleep. I was like, this day went to bed. And that night, I had a dream. My mom came to me in a dream. And it was so real that the next day I got up, I was pumped. And in my dream, I went into the house. And it was a really pretty day. It was sunny outside. And she was in the house washing dishes. So I ran in the house. And she was like, hey, little girl. Because that's what she called me. And I was like, hey, Ma, how are you? She was like, I'm fine. How are you? I said, I'm good. And she says, and I said, Ma, you got a minute? And she was like, yeah, what's going on? And I was like, I can't do it anymore. She was like, you can't do what? I was like, Ma, I can't stay with Sean anymore. I said, I can't do it. And she was like, okay. And I was like, okay. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, said, if you move, I'm going to move. And I was like, you going to come with me? She was like, sure. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to start looking for somewhere. And she said, okay, make sure it just has enough room for my kid, for my grandkids. And I was like, of course I would. So she was like, okay. So that was my dream. And for me, it was just confirmation that it was okay. Like the decisions that I had to make were okay. But when I woke up that morning, I woke up and I was like, yes. I was like, I gotta find somewhere because me and my mom, like, I remember sitting on the end of the bed and I just started busting out crying. I was like, oh my God, that was a dream. But it was so real. It was so real. And I promise you, she has never, now I have had dreams about her, but she has never come to me again in a dream since she's been gone. Never. That one time. And I remember calling my pastor later that day, telling him I needed to talk. And he was like, what's going on? And I was crying and I told him about my dream. And he said, okay, well, what did that mean to you? And I said, I think she was letting me know that what I needed to do was okay. And no matter where I go, she'll be with me. He said, okay, if that's the confirmation you needed, you got it. Now do what you got to do. He said, because we've been talking about this for over a year. So you just need to do what you got to do. So that day, I called Sean and I was like, in the next month, I'm leaving. And he was like, okay. But I think I lost 5,000 pounds that day. Like, it was just such, like, a relief. So, that's when I really started praying, to God for me to make more money. And I ended up leaving that job because of where I'm at now. I moved out and I was on my own for like 8 months before I got another job. And I tell you, didn't skip a beat. Nothing in my life changed. Nothing in my life changed. I still maintained all my bills. Jazz still stayed in all her activities. I still was shopping for every kid in America. I was still doing everything that I was doing when I was at home with the same amount of money. Like, nothing changed. I couldn't even figure it out. I was like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. I never skipped a beat. Presented itself. And I was like, I ain't trying to leave here. Like, no. Like, I declined that, I think, 5 times. Every time it came across my computer. Because somebody was emailing it to me, and I was like, delete. I was refusing. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not leaving here. I'm not leaving Volunteers of America. I'm comfortable. I'm just starting to get, I was like, no, I can't. Delete. And finally I said, all right, forget it. I'm going. Like, I was tired of fighting. So I call, set up the interview. I go to the interview, break down in the interview. I left the interview. I was like, okay, I'm not getting this job. I don't have none of the degrees they wanted. I had all the experience, but none of the paper. I broke down in the interview. I was like, there's no way she calling me back. So now you can bless me making more money where I'm at now. Stop playing. Like, I've been praying for this for a long time. Don't play with me. So the next day I get a call. Hello, this is Annette March Greer from Roberta's house. And I was like, who? Job? She was like, yes, the job you interviewed for yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh. I got to call you right back. And I hung up the phone and I just started crying. And I was so upset. I was like, didn't I tell you I didn't want to leave here? And I can't leave here. And da-da-da. And then I had a light bulb moment. I was like, okay. I never asked about salary in my interview. And I never asked about it. I got myself together. I was like, okay, let me call her back. So I apologize for having to hang up so fast. And I made up some story. So I made up some story. It's not sad. In my interview, I never asked you about salary. And I never asked about benefits. So she's like, yeah, you didn't. She was like, I thought that was very odd. And I didn't want to tell her, well, I really didn't care. Like, so she said, well, the benefits of this. She said, the salary is this. And I said, now I'll start in 2 weeks. She said, excuse me, I said, I can start in 2 weeks. Let me tell you, not only, I mean, he blessed me with a job that has actually been way more than any amount of money could ever matter. But he had to make it about the money because I wouldn't have gone. So not only were the benefits great, my salary more than doubled. More than doubled. So I was like, wow. But it wasn't until I got there. So I get there. I had been there for maybe a month. And I realized that I didn't have bipolar disorder, suffer from depression. I had to give the families this form on how grief affects you mentally, physically, emotionally, all of those. And I was sitting there, that's me. Oh, and that's me. And I just started crying. And my director was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm not depressed. And I'm not bipolar. I said, I just been dealing with grief all these years. So she's like, what are you talking about? So I explained to her everything that had been going on. And that was like the biggest breakthrough for me. Like, the biggest breakthrough for me. And I was just like, wow. Like, that just wowed me. So I was good, you know. So I was able to kind of deal with Spanky's death differently. Although it affected me greatly, it didn't. Like with my mom's, I just really hit rock bottom. Like I just was really a mess. So, and I really felt like I lost a lot because I didn't know what I was going through. Like I said, I never related any of it to Spanky. It was just different because of everything that I went through with my mother. I just refused. I just knew I couldn't go down that road again. Like, you know, once I started kind of dealing with him, you know, I started my new job and helped me. It just helped me cope, and it helped me to deal with his death way differently than I did with my mom's. So it was, I don't know. Like I said, I would have never taken that job if the salary was anything close to what I was making at VOA. I wouldn't have left. So I just feel like God had to make it about the money to get me there, to help me heal way I needed to heal, and to recognize that everything that I went through with after I lost my mom was like normal stuff, although I didn't feel like, you know, it was normal stuff. So I guess maybe a year after Spanky's death, I started thinking about reaching out to, and it was just like, at first it was like a little thought, and then it just kept coming. I mean, you know, my feelings for that kept getting stronger and stronger. So I remember coming home one day and I called Danielle, who was Spunky's major, and where was the person at? And shall I say her name? I asked her where Carrie was at, and I said, okay, I need all her information. So she was like, okay. And I said, you want to know why I need all her information? She was like, well, why? She said, why? I said, because I'm going to write her a letter. And she was like, okay, well, I'm not surprised. And I was like, you're not surprised? She said, no. Learning who you are and getting to know you over the year or whatever. She said, I'm surprised it took you this long. And I said, well, you know. So she gave me all her information. I wrote her a letter. And it was really long, but it basically was just letting her, that I forgive her for what she, I guess, in the letter, it was telling her she needs to learn how to forgive herself, and we both need to just move on. Like, I just didn't want to be stuck in the place I was at, you know. So I felt like the only thing for me to do was to reach out to her, and that's what I did. I used Maryland Transportation Authority police address at that time because I didn't want her to know my information. Maybe a week or so later, Kelly, and I was like, yeah, she was like, she wrote you back. And I was like, oh my gosh, she wrote me back? Yes. I said, I'm on my way. So I was at work. Man, I told my director, I was like, I gotta go, I'll be right back. And she was like, you gotta go? I was like, I gotta go, I can't explain, I'll be right back. So I drove down to police headquarters, and we went in this little room. Yo gave me the letter, and I was like, okay, open it. She was like, no, you open it. I mean, I felt like we were like two little kids, and I was like, no, you open it. She was like, okay. So she opened it, and I said, okay, read it. And she was like, you want me to read it? I said, yeah, I want you to read it. So she read it, and Carrie basically was saying in her letter, I guess she was trying to explain to me what she thought happened. And her version was nothing like what really happened, but I just felt like because she was so intoxicated, it's almost like you tell a story for so long, you start to believe it. So I think in her mind, what happened really happened, although that's not how it happened. So after Danielle read me the letter, I said, okay, you know. So Danielle said, none of this is true. And I think she was a little offended.
Danielle?
Yeah, I think Danielle felt some kind of way because of the stuff Carrie was saying in the letter. And I remember telling Danielle, well, this is what she thinks happens. This is how she thinks things happen. You know, she was drunk. Well, you know, we have, and they have, you know, police have a real tight bond when it comes to their own. And I understood that. But that was also my brother. So I didn't want her to kind of think I think she felt like, I don't know what she felt, but she just didn't take that very well. And I knew in my mind that if I wrote her again, because now I felt like I need to address this. I need to let you know this is not what happened. And that's what I told Danielle. Please understand, I'm going to let her know this is not what happened. It was not two people in that car. It was just you. You know, they have pictures.
So what did she say happened?
She said her friend, her male friend, was driving the car, but it was nobody in that car but her. Like, nobody in that car but her. And the night of the accident, after she hit my brother, it was a guy behind her in his car. And then behind that guy, it was a car with three girls. Well, the guy followed her to the 95. Well, the girls pulled over, and they actually stayed with my brother. So while I thought he was by himself, he really wasn't by himself, but he wasn't with family. So to me, he was still by himself. But I was really grateful that they stopped and stayed with him. And I was also very grateful that that guy took the time to follow her. Like, he took pictures of her license plate, took pictures of her, like. And when he got to the toll, because she actually went through, when he got to the toll, he told the person to let the police know that that's how that happened. But, so I don't know where she thought that it was somebody else in it. So her letter was basically that. So when I wrote her back again, and I didn't think I would be writing her back again, you know, and I told her in my first letter, that the reason I was able to really give her was because at her sentencing, while she wasn't able to address the family verbally, they offered her a plea. Now, vehicular manslaughter, the max is 10 years. They offered her a plea for 15, thinking if she didn't take the 15, that she would get the 10. So, because they wanted her to get the maximum amount of time, and then she already had she had 2 years for outstanding DUI. It was already, when she came to her sentencing, she had already been incarcerated. So they kept her. So at the sentencing, she took the plea for 15 years, and everybody was just like blown away. Even her lawyer, like, and to me that spoke volume, because it just said, I'm going to take ownership for what I did, and I'm going to take this plea, and I'm going to serve my time. I have not been able to address you guys or apologize or any of that, but this is my way of saying, you know, I'm sorry, or I'm owning up to what I did. Because clearly she didn't have to take that plea. So she took the plea for 15 years. So she ended up getting 17 because she already had to serve the 2 years. When I had to read my impact statement, I remember telling the judge, like, I can't even really read what I wrote now because of what just happened. You know, I said, at that point, she just really did my family a favor, because they were telling us the trial was going to be 6 weeks long, and whether nobody came or not, I had to be there. Like, you need to be here every day. The jury needs to see your face. They need to see you. Like, is this a show? You know, like, I couldn't imagine sitting there listening to every gory little detail. I 6 weeks, I knew my grandparents weren't going to be able to handle it. I knew my family just wasn't going to be able to handle it. So she did us the biggest favor, like, in the world. Like, and in my letter, my first letter I wrote to her, I let her know that, like, you just don't know, you know, how that impacted me and my family. I just felt like she didn't know she did us a favor, but she really did us I wouldn't have been able to handle that sitting there. Like, when I wrote her the second time, that letter was basically just to let her know nothing happened the way you think it happened. Like, this is really what happened.
So what really happened? You didn't kind of go into that. Like, how did it really happen?
It happened, you were drunk. First of all, just like I told the judge, I don't even know if I'm more upset with her or the people that let her drive throughout that day. She started drinking at 6 or 7 o'clock that morning. She worked on the block, so she worked in one of those clubs down there. Well, she was intoxicated that morning. She went to lunch with a friend of hers at some restaurant downtown, ended up getting put out of the restaurant because she was really loud and obnoxious in the restaurant and drunk. The last person to see her was the parking attendant, and literally had to help her get her keys. He had to help her in the truck. He had to help her pay to get out of the parking garage. Why would you let her drive? I told the judge he should be on trial to me. Like, she didn't kill my brother. He killed my brother. Like, that's how I felt, because he could have just as easily said, I can't find your keys, and called her a cab. Or, you know, at what point do you care enough to not let somebody drive drunk as she was? Like, you had to help her. You had to help her find the keys. You had to help her in the truck. You had to help her start it up. And then you had to help. But you felt like it was okay. And he must not have thought it was wrong, because he wrote it in his statement. Who does that? Like, he wrote a statement. At what point do you realize that was dumb of me? So, and as a result, that's what happened.
So she was on.
So Spunky was putting up a roadblock between 95, where 95 and 395 split. So trucks couldn't go into downtown because, you know, they do fireworks and stuff. So no trucks could go downtown from that exit. And he didn't even, she hit him from behind, so he didn't even see it coming. No, he wasn't. He was setting up the cones. Okay. And actually, the thing about it, he wasn't even scheduled for that detail. He went over there to help his fellow officers out because they hadn't been relieved to eat for dinner. So he told Danielle, I'll go over there and relieve them, and then when they come back, I'll go back to my post. So she was really feeling some kind of way because she was like, I should have never let him go. But, I mean, that's just who he was, though. Like, and he even, she said, when he got there, the guys were like, you sure you're going to be here you want to be here by yourself? You good? You know, and he was like, I'm good, just go. But that's not what he said. But that's the nicer version of what he said. But, you know, he was like, just go, I'm good, you know. Favor, being, you know. So, but I just had to tell in her letter that, you know, that, and it's a year, like a year later.
Right. So time's gone
by, and I don't know, like, if you were still telling yourself this, you know, and even when I was writing her, when she wrote me back the second time, like I wrote her back again, and then she wrote me back again, and it just didn't end. But that year, I started writing her. My mother-in-law had a fashion show to do at Jessup, and I was scheduled to help her. The day I was supposed to go out there, my daughter had a show on the same day, so I had to back out at the last minute. So I didn't go. So here we are the following year. So I had been writing Carrie for a year. So the following year, the same show comes up. So my mother-in-law was like, you on show? So I was like, okay, when is it? She told me when it was. I said, okay, population of inmates are you working with? She said, I'm working with all. And I was like, okay, cool. So she said, I outfits for 16 girls, daughters. So at that time I was got all the clothes from there. So the day of, I get to my mother-in-law's house, and she was like, driving, because everything is not going to fit in my car. I drove, she drove. We get there, we check in, get it. They had all the inmates that were participating in the show in this big room, and they had people there doing their hair, their nails. Like, it's a really big deal. Like, all the dignitaries were there. And so I was like, okay. So, of course, I have the kids. So, all the kids lined up. So, I get to the last little girl. And they said that she wore a size 12. So, I have a kid's 12. But she was in an adult 12. So, I'm looking at her. And I'm looking at this outfit. And I'm like, I said, baby, Miss Kelly made a mistake. I said, I'm going to have to find you an age-appropriate outfit in an adult 12 because I got you the wrong size. And I didn't want to make it seem like it was her being that size, so I put it on me, and I said, so she was like, okay. So I said, see that chair over there? I said, just go sit right there, and, you know, I'll get back to you. She said, okay. I said, and, you know, I was asking her some questions, what she like and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, let me go look around. So I go to all the other tables, and I'm looking around trying to find her an outfit. Well, I see this lady come in to the room, and she was just standing in the doorway, like looking around, and she kind of spotted the little girl. So I was like, oh my gosh, I could tell on her face that that was her daughter. So I kind of hurried up over there to her, and I said, I see you looking at your daughter, and I said, don't think we ignoring her. I said, I got her the wrong size. I said, I just found her some clothes in a size 12, adult 12. I said, so see if this stuff fits, and we can go from there. So she said, okay. I said, I got her 2 outfits. I said, and just let me know if they work. So I went around and was helping other inmates and their daughters. So we kind of made eye contact, and she gave me thumbs up, and they both looked like, yay, this works. So I was like, okay. So I go on about helping everybody else. So my mother-in-law was like, Kel, lined up because they're ready to start. So I lined them up because I still have a couple other people. Lined them all up, and she may have been about 10 feet away from me. She lined probably about 10 feet away from her. So she said, okay, she was fussing at him, talking about, okay, listen up, listen up. It's very important that I have everybody in order. So as I say your name and your child's name, make sure you're in the order that I say it in. So she said the first lady, she said the second lady, and then the third lady was Carrie King, her daughter. Well, that was the lady that killed my brother. And also the one that I had been helping all that day. So her daughter was the one that couldn't fit the 12. And she was the one that I went over to the door and was like, we were having a conversation that whole entire time. And I did not know it. So when she said her name, remember I had been writing her for a year. So I knew her name, and every emotion in my body my knees started buckling. I broke out in a cold sweat. I felt like I had to cry. I felt like I had to throw up. I had to pee. Like everything. And so one of the dancers that came along with us was like, Miss Kelly, what's wrong? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to play it off. She said, you are white. And I was like, really? I said, oh, you know how it is when you get old. I said, let me go walk this off. So I kind of walked to the back of the room, and I just started crying. And I remember saying, okay, God, I don't know what you're trying to do, but it's enough that I write her. But now, you throwing her in my face, like I was so distraught. So I'm back there crying, trying to get myself together. And my mother-in-law is like, Kelly, come on. We got to get this together. We got to get them out there. So, I kind of blow my nose, wipe my face, and try to be okay. So we get the ladies, we line them up, and we get them out there. Well, it's at least 300 inmates in another big room, along with all these dignitaries. And, it's a really big show. So as the ladies were leaving out, we were standing there. They were all giving us hugs. So the first lady was like, thank you, Kelly. Oh, y'all great. And then the second lady, so I get to Carrie, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God. Like, she is getting ready to hug me, and she still doesn't know who I am. Like, she doesn't even realize who I am. So she gave me a hug, and she was like, thank you so much. She was like, my daughter's so excited. You made this possible, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there going, I cannot. Like, I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Like, I really did. So the show goes on. They model. They come back. They go back in this room. And they actually fed the inmates and their daughters. It was like a luncheon, fashion show type luncheon thing. So we in there getting all the clothes together, packing up everything. So my mother-in-law says, what's wrong? And I was like, nothing. She was like, you have been in my life for how many years now? I know when something is wrong with you. And I was like, Ma. I said, see that lady over there? She was like, yeah. She said, oh, she was in my show last year. And I was just like, oh my God, suppose I had gone last year. Now, had I gone last year, we had only written like once or twice. And no telling how I would have responded then. Because I really wanted to knock her out then. I promise you, I didn't know whether I wanted to hug her, smack her, shoot her, beat her up. And I'm just looking at all these guards around like I tell you, every emotion in my body was just like going. So, my mom was like, my mother-in-law was like, okay, well, just pack your stuff and go, because I know, this is I was like, no, I can't leave now without letting her know who I am. I said, I can't do it. There's no way I can leave. So she was like, okay, well, I got your back. Whatever you choose to do, I got you. So I was like, okay. So I go in the bathroom, and I cry some more, and, I fuss at God some more, and I'm trying to, like, really figure out why this is happening. Not getting any answers, but I'm just going to do it. So I go back in there, and I start walking towards her table. So it was just her and her daughter at the table. And as I approached the table, she was like, oh, my goodness, thank you, Miss Kelly. Still, the name is still not clicking. She was like, thank you so much. She was like, my daughter was so excited. She didn't think she was going to be able to be in the show because of the clothes. She said, you made it possible. And before she could say anything else, I kind of put my hand up and was like, you stop, just, and I said, stop, just stop. I said, I came over here to specifically for one reason. And I said, and that was I said, I don't have anything else to say after that. I don't know what else to say after that. I said, but I knew I couldn't leave here without letting you know who I am. So by now she done put the fork down, and she just kind of looking up at me like, like, oh my God. So I said, I'm Kelly Brooks. I said, oh my God. So she jumps up and she gives me a hug. Oh my God. I was like, and she was like, oh my God. She said, I wish you would have said something sooner and we could have had a conversation. And when she's hugging me, my arms, like, I kind of, like, did something. And then I remember putting my hands down to my side, and she wouldn't let me go. And I remember, like, shrugging her, like, get off me. Like, it was enough. I didn't want to push her. So I just kind of... So she got the hint, I guess, and sat back down. And then she's just talking about, oh my God, I'm just so thankful that you came over here and told me who you were. And she's like I said, I wish you had come sooner so we could talk. And I was sitting there shaking my head like, I can't. I said, I can't. I said, I can't do this right now. I said, like I said, I don't even know what to say. I don't have anything to say. I just needed to let you know who I was. So she was saying how she appreciated who I had been to her over the year. And I really didn't want to get into a conversation because I didn't know what her daughter knew. Like, I didn't know.
So her daughter was still right there.
Yeah, her daughter was still right there. So I didn't know if her daughter knew exactly why she was in there. Like, I didn't know. So that was another reason I just couldn't have that conversation with her. So she was like, I know in your next letter you'll be able to tell me exactly how you felt. And, at a certain point I started sending her, like, inspirational stuff and spiritual stuff. And so didn't know she was keeping it, like, So I said, okay, I said, I hope you and I gotta go. So, I go back over to my mother-in-law, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. So she was like, okay. So they were ready anyway, so we all leave out. And I was so glad that I was in my own car, because at first I was supposed to be in her car with her. So I'm in my own car. I tell you, I got in my car, turned the ignition, and as soon as I turned the ignition, the floodgates opened. I cried, and I fussed, and I cursed, and I cried, and all the way down the Beltway. So it got to a certain point, and I text my pastor, and I'm like, I need to talk to you. So he called me up, and he was like, he always says, what's up? Hey, what's up? And I just started busting out crying, and I'm like, he was like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's wrong? I couldn't even get myself together enough to tell him what had happened. And I remember him asking me, was I driving? And I said yes. And he kind of cursed at me. He was like, pull your ass over. I can't, pull over. He said, Kelly, is it David? Is it Jazz? Your grandparents, like, is everything okay? And I'm just crying. And he was like, look, God damn it, I can't understand what you're saying. You gotta calm down and pull over. So I finally found a medium strip where I could pull over. So I pull over and I got myself together enough to tell him what had happened. And he just kept saying, wow. Wow. He must have said wow like 5 or 6 times. And I said, okay, I don't need you to say wow anymore. I need some damn answers. Like, I couldn't even believe I was talking to him like that. But, I mean, I had it. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I said, I need some answers. I need you to tell me why. Like, why? Why is this happening? Why did this happen? I need to know. So, he was quiet for a minute, and then he said, well, it could be one or two reasons. He said, I don't know what you have been saying to her in the letters. And he said, I don't, he said, because I'm going to tell you, I'm a pastor, and I promise you that I don't know if I could do what you're doing. He said, so I don't even know what you were saying in your letters. He said, but maybe God was just testing you to see if what you were saying in your letters you truly meant. He said, or it could be, and he said, I'm more inclined to think that it's this. And I said, what? He said, maybe God was showing her what forgiveness looked like or felt like, or, you know, maybe you're her example of forgiveness. So I'm just quiet, and then I just say, I can't do this. This is too much. Like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this. So, like, I don't even believe none of that. Like, and I'm sitting here going, I don't believe any of this. So I'm still crying, but I'm not crying, like, as much. So he was like, he stayed on the phone with me for a little while, and then I said, okay, I gotta go. I'll just touch bases with you later. He was like, please text me when you get home. So I was like, yeah, okay. So I hang up. And for me, you know, my drug of choice is shopping. So, you know, I'm going to take my little happy self out White Marsh to Macy's. And, you know, even if I don't buy anything, being in the mall that's my sanctuary. That's where I, you know. So I get out Macy's. And I'm walking around and, you know, tears dropping every now and then, and I, you know, wipe them in. So I'm looking through this rack of clothes, and I kind of was looking to my right. But then when I turned around to go left, it was this little old white lady just standing there, but she was shorter than me. So, and I'm like, I mean, it was like she just appeared. And she had this big old bag, and she had on this big old country hat. And I remember looking at her like, oh my gosh, like, where'd she come from? So she looked at me, and I was like, looking at her, and she was like, hi, honey. And I was like, hi. And she was like, are you okay? And I promise you, when she said, are you okay? I bust out crying. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I just had the worst day of my life, and I can't believe this is happening to me. And da-da-da. And so she grabs me, and she was like, come here, come here. So, I mean, we are in Macy's in the middle of the aisle. People walking by looking at us like looking at us like we crazy, because I'm snotting all over the place. I'm crying, and she is like holding me because I'm bent down, and she is like patting me. But then she just started talking about, you know, God and how he doesn't put more on you that you can bear, and just really starts ministering to me. And I'm like blown away. Like, everything she was saying, it was just like, it was flowing. Like, it was flowing. And I was like, so, you know, after a minute, my back started hurting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to stand up, because I had my handbag on my right arm. And the way I was leaned over, I was getting tired. So I stand up, and I look at my handbag, and I get my tissue, and I wipe my face, and I turn back around to say thank you, and she's gone. Gone. And I'm like, I said, wait a second. So I started looking through the clothes racks, felt like I was going crazy. I'm looking through the clothes rack and I'm like, okay. And I'm looking under stuff and people are walking by like, what the heck is she doing? I said, all right, this is it for today. I'm going home. I put everything I had in my hand down. That probably was a good thing because I ain't eat anyway. I put it down. I got in my car and I went home. I was like, I cannot believe nobody. I said, nobody is going to believe this. Like, I don't know where she appeared. She disappeared just as fast as she appeared. Like, instantly. She was gone. She was gone. I was like, I don't believe this. I was like, so I went home and I went to sleep after I cried some more. So I got up the next day. I looked like I had been in a fight and lost because, you know, my eyes was like so swollen. I was just a mess. And that whole day, like that whole day for me, even still, even now, even when I talk about it, it's like I cannot believe that happened. Like, and that's why I kept saying, it wasn't it enough that I was writing her. But now, you know, I got...
Keep going.
I don't know. What, like, 6 years later? 5 years later?
How often are you guys writing?
All the time. And you know what? Let me tell you what else happened. So, in one of her letters, maybe... So, I don't know when, but of course it was after the year. So, we had been writing a year. One of the letters, she started talking about her son, how he was going through stuff, couldn't find housing and all of this other stuff. So, I have a lot of resources. So, in her letter that I wrote her back, I said, well, if he ever needs any help with resources, tell him to call me. So, of course, telling him to call me, I had to give her my cell number. So, I really wanted to put in there, don't you call me. just have him call me. But I never thought that she would call me. Because a lot of time went by. And I say a lot of time, but it might not have been that much time. I don't remember because I haven't been good with time. But anyway, one summer. So it was a summer month. It was a summer day. And I'll never forget. I was coming in the house. I was running up the steps. And my phone rang. And I was like, I didn't recognize this number. But a couple days before, that same number kept popping up from that same location. And I just didn't answer it. I just didn't answer it. So a couple days have gone by. And now I'm coming in the house. And this same number pops up. So I'm like, what is this number? So I answered it. Oh, and I didn't have, like, still had a flip phone. So I'm looking on it and I'm like, what is this number? So I answered the phone and it said, you have a call from an inmate at whatever, Jessup, whatever the recording said. And if you don't want to receive any more calls from this number, press 7. But if you want to answer it, press 0. So I'm still not putting 2 and 2 together. Like, I'm so slow. I'm still not thinking or even connecting it to her. Because I'm like, who is calling me from? So when I push 0, she says, hey, girl. And I was like, hey, what's up? Let me tell you, we talked for 30 minutes like we had been best friends forever. So again, when we finally hung up, I sat out on that porch because when I answered the phone, I was still outside. So once I realized it was her, I sat on the porch out front and I would just sit there and we just carried on the conversation like we had been best friends forever. So I hung up and I sat there and said, I cannot believe I just, like, it was nothing. The conversation flowed. I mean, I have been so blown away by some of the stuff that has been, I mean, and you can ask my pastor could probably write a whole book on me calling him, telling him, talking to him, and I just keep saying, wow. Like, but that day I was like, I just had a conversation. So needless to say, the writing continued, and now the calls start. So I think that opened the door for her to feel comfortable enough to call me. So now she calls, and we still write.
So how often does she call?
Whenever she has money on her card, she sometimes once a week, and then sometimes it just really depends on how much she works, because she gets paid as much as once a week, and sometimes it's once every. Not calling, then I'm getting letters. I don't know, like a couple years ago, she was package time, and each package time is a different different items they can receive. So like, next package may be electronics, and then the next the package that was clothing, like, and in one of her letters she was saying that package time is coming, and she was really blah 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 blah, and she had stuff in there that she was going to order. Well, she called me in the meantime, so in between getting a letter and her calling me, package time hadn't arrived yet. So I don't know what kind of mood I was in or whatever, but I said I just really wanted to do something nice for her. So I surprised her and ordered some of the stuff off of her list and had it sent to her, like, because you have to go to a specific site, like, everything is very specific. So I went to that site and I ordered what I ordered, and I had it. That package, I did. Every time I do something, it's like I think I wow myself. Like, what am I doing? So now I'm at the point where now, I don't know. Sometimes I think I just think I bit off more than I can chew. Like, actually gets released even if she doesn't get parole. August 2016. Everything that she wants to do when she gets out involves me. My church, she wants to volunteer or get a job where I work. Like, I'm like, oh my God. I don't know. Like, she wants to write my family a letter. And she wants me to, like, read it. However, nobody besides my grandparents and my Uncle Wayne know that I communicate with her. My grandparents are 97 and 89, so they probably don't even remember I told them that I do it. And my Uncle Wayne, when I told him I reached out to her, that was so long ago, I haven't told him that it's been consistent for the last 4 years or whatever. And I haven't told him that we actually talk. And my uncle, my mom's brother, was killed last year. So August 2014, he was coming. Girl, I think she was like 24, 25, passenger. But he didn't die until October. So from August to October, he was in the hospital. Like, it was a mess. His leg was amputated. One of his ears, like, he had so many surgeries and so much happened between August and October, and then he died in October. So we buried him October 2014. So now my grandfather has lost his only son and a grandson to a drunk driver. I'm thinking to myself, the last thing they want to hear is an apology. Like, I really don't know how my family is going to receive. I don't know. I don't even expect people to understand why I did what I did, because I don't, like, I mean, I'm telling you, and I talked to her, the last time I talked to her, it was like, well, the time before the last time I talked to her. So, early last month, I just had a meltdown on the phone, like, because she was saying how me and, I mean, she was just giving me so many kudos. And I just like lost it, and I just started crying, and I told her, I said, let me tell you something. I said, I told you this before. I said, and I'm telling you again, and I don't know if it was, I don't know what was going on with me that I just felt so like angry. I didn't do this for you. Like, my reason for writing you the first time was totally about me. Like, it had nothing to do with you. I was not trying to help you at all. At all. Like, that's the last thing I wanted to do. This was just for me. So, you know, for me it was almost a slap in the face from God. Like, saying, oh, that's what you think. You think this just gonna help you? No, it's not. Like, I feel like it has helped me, but it has helped her way more. Like, she has definitely grown over the years. She is definitely a different person. You know, even her letters are different. You know, church. You know, it's just all the stuff that a person should feel good about. Like, I should be saying, wow, I had a lot to do with that. I don't feel that way sometimes. I don't feel that way sometimes. I can't explain how I feel. I can't. It's almost like I don't want the pat on the back. I don't want everything that comes with helping her. Because I keep going back to, I was not trying to help you. I mean, and she was saying how because I have forgiven her, she has learned to forgive and she has also, you know, brother who really hurt her in whatever kind of way. She didn't say what he did, and I didn't ask, but apparently it was something really, really bad, and she was like out to him, and, you know, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be feeling this way. I mean, it's just amazing. So different from the first, when she first said her life just felt so dark and bleak, and like she just, it was that she feels totally different. She was like, I feel like I can conquer the world now. Like, oh my God, like, I don't know. I just keep saying that's a lot, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yep, she asked me to write a letter on her behalf. What's my thing is, that's a lot. I'm just going to get a t-shirt and say that's a lot. I told her, I don't know if I can do that. You know, I guess I just really got to pray about a whole lot of stuff. Like, on one hand, I had my family, you know, to think about, I feel like. But then maybe this will help my family. Like, you know, maybe I'm, like, not giving them. This will help them, especially my grandparents and my aunts who just lost my aunt. This will help them. I'm not saying that they have to reach out to this person and, you know, but maybe this will help them to forgive her and be able to move on. You know, losing my uncle, my grandfather has really, like, I mean, he may be 97. However, mine, like, sharp as a tack. My grandmother, too, sharp as a tack. But I have seen him age 100 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he went from 97 to 197. Like, no desire to do anything. I have no desire to do anything. So it has really taken a toll on my family. So I don't know. I guess sometimes I just think I think too much. You know, that's a lot. It's a lot. Well, we'll see.
Do you feel like you've touched a lot?
I definitely have changed. I don't feel bad about it, but I don't know that I feel like a person should feel knowing that I have impacted somebody's life like I have. Good. Like, and I think because of the circumstances makes it different. Like, you my best friend. Like, you killed somebody that I love very, very much. And now I have helped you be a better person. That's a lot. That is a lot.
That's God.
That is nothing but God. But it's still a lot. That's a lot. And she even says that. Like, the last letter she wrote, she said that she really, because when I had my meltdown on the phone, that she talked about us actually having, like, I had a meltdown, then she started crying, so, I'm kind of expressing to her how I felt, and I'm crying, and she's crying, but in her letter, she was like, that was a breakthrough for us. Like, she was like, that was amazing. And I'm not even upset. She said, I'm not upset that you weren't trying to help me. She said, that just proves that it was nothing but God that got us to this point. And I mean, and she said all of that. Like, when I first started writing her, you couldn't talk about God. So I did it on purpose. Like, I think that's why I was sending her all of those spiritual, like, things. I was just sending her stuff all the time. I would just send her envelopes full of stuff and say, maybe you might want to put this on your wall. Maybe. Like, and I was just, and I mean, I was kind of doing it, hoping it would help, but I was doing it to be smart, too, because of just some things she had said prior to, like, not really being into church and not believing and not. So, I'm telling you, this is who I am. I'm telling you, this is who I am. And because of what happened, I was raised in church, but this just took me on a whole different level as it related to church. So now I'm raised in the church, I go to church, but now I'm really in church. You know what I mean? Like, it's just on a different level. So I can only be me. So I'm going to, I'm gonna send it your way, and you either listen or you don't. You either have it or you don't. But I mean, now she got it, and that's all she talk about is God. Like, that's all she talk. Person, wanting to have, and she actually said that she doesn't consider herself an alcoholic because alcoholics, always worry about where the next drink is coming from. Alcoholics do. Like, she went through all of these reasons as to why she's not an alcoholic. She said, I just had too much to drink, and I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't consider myself an alcoholic because I don't need to drink. She said, I don't need to drink. I don't wake up wanting to drink. I don't, I don't worry about where my next drink is coming from. I'm not that person, so I don't consider myself an alcoholic. I know one thing, I will never, ever drink and drive again. Never will I make that mistake again. Ever. So, a lot. I don't know.